Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, That Grunge Girl. If you're new here, please press that red subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you like to see more mental health content. I am not a doctor. I have just got lived experience with mental illnesses, and I've also studied a Cert 4 in mental health peer work, and I'm currently studying a diploma of counseling. And on this channel, I just like to make videos on different mental health issues, my views, and combined with the research and lived experience I've had. So for today's video, this video is actually requested by somebody, and this is a video talking about bipolar versus borderline personality disorder. And I actually don't know why I've never made a video on this, because this is something that's definitely very interesting and relates to me as well personally. So yeah, somebody commented and asked me to make a video on this because they are currently kind of trying to figure out what their diagnosis is. Within mental health, there's a lot of confusion between like patients and also people who are diagnosing, like psychiatrists and doctors. There's a lot of confusion around borderline personality disorder and bipolar because some of the symptoms are kind of similar and can often interlink and overlap. And so it is possible, just to start off, it is possible to have both borderline personality disorder and which is called BPD for short, and bipolar disorder. Another reason why it can get very confusing is because on paper, a lot of clinicians will write bipolar disorder as bipolar affective disorder, so it will come up as BAP, and then borderline personality disorder will often be written as BPD. This can get very confusing. So obviously, because of that as well, sometimes clinicians can accidentally write the wrong thing. But I'm going to be explaining the symptoms of bipolar and the symptoms of BPD, and then I'm going to talk about how they interlink, if you can have both, and things like that. Symptoms of bipolar affective disorder, that's what it's called. I'm just going to be saying bipolar. Symptoms are extreme high levels of energy. So this is all from the Black Dog Institute, by the way. I'll link down below where I get this information from, but I really like this website. So high levels of energy, feeling wired, hyper, extremely energetic, talking really fast, making decisions quickly, having your thoughts really race and jump all over the place. It may come out in ways that are kind of, people can't follow your speech or your train of thought, and it's just very muddled and jumbled, kind of like what you may see sometimes in schizophrenia even. So another symptom is reduced need for sleep, so not sleeping. This is symptoms of mania. So these are symptoms of mania, so just not needing sleep at all, going days, weeks, months, whatever it is, without really sleeping or getting very minimum sleep. Extreme positive mood, so feeling extremely confident, optimistic, that you're amazing, really inflated sense of self, and feeling really creative, happy, really like high. Extreme irritability, so irritable mood, impatient, even aggressive or angry behaviors. Inappropriate behaviors, so this can be getting involved in other people's business kind of thing, saying things that are not appropriate in social settings, having no filter. Increased risk-taking activities. This could be drinking heaps, doing drugs, hanging out with people that aren't good, gambling all your money, spending large amounts of money, making very irrational decisions, doing outrageous things that you wouldn't normally do, behaving in ways you wouldn't normally do, dressing more colorfully out there, increase like sex drive, heightened creativity, so feeling really intense, feelings of that you've kind of unlocked this like creative part of you that's just absolutely amazing and incredible, and that you need to tell everyone about it. thinking that you're going to just become really famous or something, you know, or have an idea you think is just incredible and you found the answer to some major world problem. Having mystical thinking, thinking that you have magic powers, thinking that you're a you know, a person from the past, like it could be historical person, so like thinking that you're Jesus, thinking that you're you know, a famous person, thinking that you are just really special and that you have connections to certain things, or seeing patterns in things that mean something to you, seeing you know, a correlation between certain events that are happening, thinking that they're meaning something. You may think that you're you can read people's minds, or they can read your mind. This can tie in with hallucinations also, where you think that you're you know, really paranoid. So you can think that you're being followed. You can think that police or governmental people are after you, or they're trying to do something to you. Having a high rate of consciousness, so you're thinking that you're connected with everything. And, you know, obviously having delusions and hallucinations, depressive aspects. So, you know, these are things like sleeping too much, being really sore in your body, feeling very negative about yourself and about your situation, sleeping, as I said, sleeping heaps, so like not being able to keep up with personal hygiene, which can also be a part of mania, where because you get so caught up in everything, you forget to do personal hygiene, so that can go down the drain. You may feel suicidal even if you're really depressed, obviously very low mood, feeling numb, feeling empty for long periods of time. Often, so with bipolar, doesn't matter what type of bipolar you have, these mood phases is what I will call it. This is a big distinction between bipolar and BPD, is that with bipolar, these symptoms have to last. For you to have bipolar, these symptoms have to be pretty consistent for at least, I think it's 4 days or more. So you have to have these symptoms kind of prolonged for an episode. That's, you know, in bipolar you have what they call episodes. So these are periods, lengths of time. Your mood is not going to be fluctuating all over the place like you would see with BPD. That is a big difference between bipolar and BPD, and is something that clinicians will look at when you are experiencing symptoms. Another thing is that often if you're experiencing hallucinations and delusions, that is usually more linked to bipolar disorder than BPD. Yes, you can have that stuff with BPD, but it is not a main feature of BPD. So if you were having all those other symptoms, then it will be more clear cut. So those are the symptoms of just bipolar as a whole. As I said, there are different types of bipolar. Symptoms of BPD. This is from the Health Direct governmental website, Australia. So I'm going to link this page also. So what are the symptoms? There are 9 symptoms, but you don't need to have all of them. You only need to have 5 symptoms to actually fit the criteria for BPD. Feeling chronic emptiness or boredom, low self-esteem and not knowing who you are, as in sense of self, strong, overwhelming and fluctuating emotions and feelings, so very up and down emotions that can change hourly. So again, you can see, but BPD, it's more fluctuating up and down very fast. Intense mood swings, outbursts of inappropriate anger. You can have really bad anxiety, depression, irritability that come with that. A pattern of tumultuous relationships. So instability in relationships is a big one. So with friends, families, loved ones. Alternating between idolization and devaluing other people, which is also called splitting, where you go from really liking, like loving someone, thinking they're like your favorite person and all that, to then going to the opposite side where you basically are like, you know, I don't like you anymore. Fear, extreme fear of being alone and frantic efforts to avoid abandonment. This can be real or this can be imagined. unstable and distorted self-image and sense of self, feeling neglected and alone, chronically empty, and just like feeling dissociated and like not really having a like struggling with derealization when you're stressed. Suicidal thoughts or suicide attempts, impulsive and risk-taking behavior such as unsafe sex, illegal drug use, gambling, eating issues, reckless driving, spending too much money, black and white thinking, difficulty finding a middle ground, and difficulty compromising, being very stubborn, stuck in the ways that the way you see it, not being able to really see anyone else's point of view. Extreme paranoid thoughts in relation to being really stressed, which is also where dissociation can come in. Sometimes you can get feeling cut off from reality, so psychotic thoughts, symptoms, self-harm such as cutting or other self-harm behaviors, feeling of low self-esteem, self-hate, and self-loathing. Borderline personality disorder comes under a personality disorders called cluster B personality disorders. Under this cluster B umbrella, you will also find other disorders such as narcissistic personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. As you can see, a lot of these symptoms are similar. So the symptoms that are actually similar, that overlink within BPD and bipolar, are the inappropriate anger, the reckless and impulsive kind of behaviors, like we were talking about with the drug use or gambling or anything along those lines, and mood swings in general, unstable relationships, low self-esteem. This is why it can be really, really confusing for people, both clinicians and patients, to get diagnosed with the right thing. Often people get misdiagnosed with either bipolar when they have BPD or BPD when they have bipolar. Then also with bipolar, there are many different types of bipolar. Bipolar 2 actually looks very similar to borderline personality disorder, specifically because it isn't as full-blown as mania. You don't get like as bad mania as what you would if you had bipolar 1. Bipolar 1, I mean, kind of typically is very obvious. It is quite like easy to diagnose in a way because people would typically end up, losing touch with reality. It's very extreme in a lot of cases, and people end up in hospital because of the way that they're behaving, either being put in hospital because of concerned family members, law enforcement, like police, things like that. So as you can see, there are a lot of similarities, but the thing that I'm going to point out, this is the main difference, like I was saying, it's the length of these symptoms and how persistent the symptoms are. If your symptoms are very choppy, like they change hourly, daily, very all over the place, not consistent, your mood is not consistent. So your mood is, you can feel really, really depressed for a few hours and then feel really, really happy and then really angry or whatever. That is definitely more with the BPD side of things. If you have bipolar, it's going to be consistent. So I have both bipolar 2 and borderline personality disorder. I often use the word mania though when describing my bipolar because I actually am not sure why my diagnosis is still type 2, because I actually experience symptoms that are a lot more common to mania. There's a whole story with my diagnosis if you want to check out those videos. But anyway, it can be hard because if you are only getting assessed by one person, they may make a mistake because it's just human error, and these symptoms are very similar, And if a person is, say you're turning up to like a mental health service and you've never been assessed by anyone, you've never been under mental health services, it can be really easy for them to misdiagnose you. What I suggest doing always when you're going to get assessed for things, if you have time to prepare, obviously, if you end up in emergency or something like that, you don't. but I always recommend to keep a mood tracker diary, because this will help you understand if your symptoms are being more drawn out or if they're very up and down like BPD. People often think the bipolar is where you have just crazy mood swings. Bipolar is not that. Bipolar, you have these, like I said, you have to have these symptoms for like 4 days or more, lasting for 4 days or more, and it has to be very consistent. If you're depressed, you have to be depressed basically without any other kind of emotional thing going on for like 4 days at least. Same with mania, hypermania, it has to be at least 4 days or longer. With bipolar, you'll commonly see episodes lasting anywhere between 4 days, weeks, to even months. People can be in manic or depressive episode for like 4 months, 5 months, 6 months even. Like it can be a very drawn out period. I used to have depressive episodes that would last 4 to 5 months. I've had manic episodes that have lasted up to a month, until intervention was taken place, and then who knows how long it could have gone on longer if I didn't have extra medication and medical intervention and things like that. So with BPD, it's very up and down. This is how I personally distinguish the difference between, am I having a BPD episode or am I having a bipolar episode? The other thing that I also use to distinguish between bipolar and BPD for me is that the main symptoms of bipolar for me is a lot of like I call them like psychotic thoughts. So a lot of like thinking that people are following me. So paranoia, thinking people are following me, thinking people are talking about me, thinking people are reading my mind, thinking that events are all signaling something to me. Like for example of this is like one time I had some thoughts about different events, very random. Then all 4 of the events happened in my real life within a week. I thought that this was me. I thought I was thinking these things and then creating them. I was convinced I was creating these things. Another time I was hallucinating and having a voice telling me that I was a fairy and that I had magic powers. Things like that, right? Another time I had hallucinations that were telling me that every time I saw police, I thought they were going to get me. Or if I heard a siren, I'd freak out. Thought people were watching me through my window, etc., etc. So those type of things. And also is that the way I distinguish it is because my symptoms will last for a long period of time. If I'm manic, if I'm depressed, it's going to be going for a few weeks at least. That's how I know. The impulsive symptoms that I experience with bipolar are more things like heightened sexuality, dressing very differently to how I normally dress, being very, very vocal, and like I was saying, inappropriate speech, being extremely extroverted, saying things that aren't appropriate, no filter whatsoever, and people will notice. Really fast speech, like pressured speech, inability to sit still, like I can't sit in my seat at all. I'm completely distracted, my thoughts are just jumping everywhere. BPD, I do not experience any of those things. Bpd impulsivity, for me, the symptoms come out in self-destructive behaviors towards myself. This can be eating disorder behaviors. I have an eating disorder, but eating disorder behaviors, self-harm such as cutting, suicide attempts, suicidality, so suicide thoughts, really just like dissociating, derealization. I don't feel like I'm myself, don't know who I am. I don't really get any of those other like sexual kind of impulses or any of those other things. I don't spend that much money, whereas with bipolar, if I'm in a manic episode, typically it can be spending really large amounts of money, just no thought about it whatsoever. Whereas BPD, if I do spend a lot of money, later on I'm like really like, oh, why did I spend all that money? Whereas bipolar doesn't even cross my mind. So those are some of the ways that I differentiate between the two diagnoses. You can be diagnosed with both. There was a lot of debate a while ago whether you could, but yeah, you can be diagnosed with both. I always recommend, definitely, because this is so hard to distinguish, I mean, I would always get a second or third opinion. For me, when I've been diagnosed, I got diagnosed with bipolar first. and then BPD was being considered, and then I got diagnosed with BPD shortly after. But I've had multiple different services and professionals all assess me, and they all said that I have BPD and bipolar. There's just been confusion on what type of bipolar I have, because different people have different opinions and stuff, and my symptoms have changed as I've been getting older recently. People can get it wrong, and if you're diagnosed with the wrong thing, it's going to create a lot of problems, because for bipolar, it's mainly managed by medication and lifestyle changes and getting enough sleep and things like that. BPD is more managed by therapy and by DBT therapy. So, medication can play a role, but it's not the main focus. So obviously you can see if you got diagnosed with the wrong thing, it can start causing problems with the way you're being given treatment and what services and things you can access. And you don't really want to be taking medications if they're not working either, because they might give you medication that's more for bipolar, such as lithium, and then you have BPD and you're feeling like, well, why am I still experiencing all these other symptoms? So yeah, if you'd like to know how I got diagnosed with bipolar or BPD, I have stories about that, about the process. I have videos on the symptoms of both BPD and bipolar in way more detail, if you like to look at that as well. If you think you have both, definitely bring it up to a doctor or a psychologist, psychiatrist, and get assessed. It's always best to have an in-depth assessment, because like I said, these things can be very tricky. But yeah, so I hope this helped you guys, and leave any comments down below, and thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel. It means a lot to me. I'll see you in my next video.